What's up, homies and friends? It's your boy Biddle, here to live stream a presidential debate. Let's go, homies. Alright, so I am live on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitch. Let's go ahead and get this set up and ready. Let's see.
Middle income household at
go.
least
Make sure this is all
$1,700
working.
more
Bring us
a
down
year.
just a little bit.
And walls will likely play up Harris's federal ban on price gouging, though keep in mind neither campaign has really offered much specifics on how they're actually going to implement and carry out these proposed policies. Cecilia.
Yeah, still waiting for a lot of details on that one.
So while we're waiting on them, shade's been thrown both sides. Tim thinks JD's weird. JD thinks Tim's a socialist. He thinks he's basically Bernie, but like we love Bernie, so like not really a bad comment in my opinion. If you want to know where I fall on this, I don't like the Democrats or the Republicans. I'm gonna be real. Democrats, I feel like, are a bunch of fake phonies who pretend that they're all for everybody, but really they're just all for whoever's funding them. And the Republicans are just weird. I'm sorry, man. They used to be like, I don't even know. Not like I didn't agree with every policy, but they weren't weird. Just weird lately. Eating dogs and cats and stuff, and that's like lately not true. So it's gonna be an interesting debate. I mean, I'm hoping for sparks. I'm hoping for insanity, even though America really just doesn't need it right now. We have enough going on. And that's the crazy thing, is really, this might be the lamest, most boring debate ever. Because really, both sides are just trying to make the other one look weird. So they just got to be not weird. So like, this might be just literally Tim Walz and JD Vance. I'm not weird. He's weird. And then Tim Walz going, I'm not weird. He's weird. It's back and forth. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. Or it's going to be fireworks. For the country, I hope it's boring. For Biddle, I'm just saying, I'm a Katy Perry fan.
That Vance told our colleague Margaret Brennan back in August that he supports an expanded child tax credit, expanded child care options for families beyond preschool and daycare.
Both of those.
But that grandparents' comment certainly striking a chord, saying aunts and uncles should be helping out more too, Cecilia.
Yeah,
as someone who has been paying child care for only one of them, they're expensive.
They are not confident that they will ever reach the American dream of being able to own a home.
I don't. I'm living in an apartment right now. This is a 2-bedroom apartment.
Cecilia, look, you've got the Fed cutting
Upstairs.
interest rates last month, right? And you've got more Americans
I'm a
wanting to get back into
millennial.
the housing market, so it's kind of encouraging to see. But Vice President Harris has now proposed a $25,000 down payment assistance program for certain.
Will that ever happen?
She's also
No.
proposing a tax incentive.
Let's be real. They promise a lot. Democrats promise, they never deliver. Republicans just scare the crap out of you.
Which has basically plagued our country for more than a decade.
That's the true policies.
So
Democrats,
this
I'm going to
depends,
overpromise,
again,
deliver
congressional
nothing.
approval. It depends
Republicans,
on the type of
I want to scare you.
And former President Trump has proposed
I want you scared.
regulations making federal land available for housing, but he hasn't offered many
Either I'm going to
details
scare
on
you to
how
vote
that
for me
is.
or scare them to hate you. One or the other.
15 to 20 million undocumented workers who he is blaming for increasing housing demand, something that Senator Vance says he supports.
Less than 10 minutes. Here we go. Here we go.
Could also impact the workforce needed to build homes here as well, Cecilia.
He has so many
What's up,
questions
Bastard?
on how if they will actually be able to pull off that plan.
Exactly.
I want to ask you a quick question about this. The economy, compared to where the country was during the pandemic, and compared to how that has wrecked economies all over the world, the U.S. economy has bounced back.
Darth
Recession
Vader.
never
Gotta have
came.
Darth Vader.
Inflation is coming down. The jobs numbers are good. Can the Harris campaign say any of that without looking out of touch? And are they in the same bind that Joe Biden was in when he was running?
I think Harris approaches it a little differently than Biden did. Biden really tried to thread the needle between, look how much I did to bring the economy back from the breach.
But he
Look
didn't.
At all the jobs that were created. Look how prices, or inflation at least, has come down.
It really hasn't.
This legislation
That's
that
the
I
problem.
passed. And yes,
People don't
I need to
feel
do
it.
more, but
And that's the problem,
working on
Joe.
it, and I've got a
And that's really why it's a close
Harris
race.
has really
If
leaned
Joe would have been
into
putting the numbers
the
up
notion that
like he
more needs to be
thinks he did or he claims he did,
She talks
this wouldn't be a
lot
close
about
race.
that. You heard Joe
Let's just
Biden
be honest.
just describing the assistance she wants to provide
It wouldn't be.
home buyers, the
If we weren't giving bombs
lots of different
to the Middle East
and so
and Ukraine as opposed to,
this
like,
is some
fixing stuff here,
indication that
it would be a
that
problem.
approach, along with interest rates coming down, along with gas prices coming down, is starting to move the needle a little bit. Our polling shows that while Trump does still have an advantage on that big issue of the economy, that she's starting to inch closer and closer.
Thank you, guys. We are just minutes away.
Which is
from
insane
Vice
because
President
Democrats have
Biden.
never had the advantage when it comes to the economy, like ever. My headphones are acting up, but I don't want to put it on speakers and then y'all just hear it double. The trials and tribulations. I need to get like small headphones or earbuds. Ooh, earbuds. Here we go.
I had progressively
commercials.
fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the risk.
Oh,
You think it's
all right.
a spike in popularity? I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
You created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I use sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I have,
Bah.
it was gone.
Everyone has that moment when they're young that they like fall into something, whether it's betting, video games, drugs, learning to take accountability of your life and figuring it out. And that's not like a thing against anyone because we all have traumas. We all have reasons why we fall into the holes we fall into. It's not a judgment against anyone who is addicted to anything. But that's a rough time in anyone's life when they're that young.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours
Ooh.
on Apple Podcasts.
And it's not the first 48.
From CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
Yeah.
Days where I cry, but we can't.
We don't like to talk about Haiti, but we are a lot of the reasons why Haiti is in the situation it's in. We've given them a lot of good things, but we've also radicalized and manipulated their country. It's messed things up.
Oh no, I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Like, even if you think about it, so a lot of people don't know this, but so when the country kind of fell apart and we started talking about bringing Kenyan military over there to like keep the peace and establish a new government, we did all that without any Haiti people, like the Haitian, what semblance of government there was. We didn't do any of that. We literally dictated Haitian governmental policy without Haiti at the table. And this was like this year or last year. So
Welcome back to the Vice President.
It's a long
Radio
history.
on CBS News. Our Ed O'Keefe is ensconced with all of our colleagues in the press corps over there in the room down the aisle from the actual debate location. Ed, we've seen major news the day of a debate before, and we're sure getting it today.
Yeah, John, you remember back in 2016 when you hosted the Republican presidential primary debate?
Here we
And
go.
That morning, Antonin Scalia died, and suddenly you had to rip up all the questions and focus on the future of the Supreme Court, which probably hadn't been a top-of-mind concern. Well, look at what's happened in the last few days. It's only October 1, but in essence, we've had some surprises. The intensification of the situation in the Middle East, major storms ravaging the Southeast that are now going to cause some debate over spending and climate change. All of them a reminder that as president, whoever is president, faces all sorts of unexpected challenges that suddenly can crop up. And, it'll be interesting to see tonight exactly how that factors in to the debate.
Which is interesting because we watched George Bush flub Katrina, and it affects the next cycle with Obama. And we're literally watching Biden flub with this hurricane a month before the election. Like, bro, there was ever a time to just start throwing money at these Republican states. It's right now. I wouldn't care. Alabama, they rain on them. Georgia, make it rain on them. Louisiana, make it rain on them. Like, it's so stupid.
The Republican Party will find itself in an uncomfortable and unwelcome and unwanted post-Trump era. What role does J.D. Vance play in that? A considerable amount of that decision will be drawn from what he does tonight. He knows that.
Yeah.
In contrast,
Legit, if JD poops the bed,
older than Kamala Harris.
this is done.
He does not have any obvious designs on the presidency if Kamala Harris wins and serves out 2 terms. He's there to enhance the ticket as it exists and amplify things on the positive side where and when he can. Very different calculations, very different risk factors for the two.
And Bob, even if you're Bob Dole, who had a bad night in 1976, he was the nominee 20 years later for the Republican Party. So you can even rescue yourself from a bad night. What are your final thoughts on tonight?
Everybody in the press, when we're in the press galleries on the campaign,
Bro, he looks so different than he used to.
Debates as low impact, but they really are high stakes. Everybody watching tonight knows one of these two men could become president of the United States. The country's going to take a temperature on character, on policy. Who are these people who might lead the country? One of them might be leading the country should a crisis happen, a heartbeat away from the presidency. We live in a time of assassination attempts on the Republican nominee, of political violence and of aging.
Which is crazy.
So it's no...
It's crazy that 2 assassination attempts have been done to Trump. That's insane. I never expected that. I expect a lot of crazy stuff this election cycle. Not 2 assassination attempts on one member.
Carolina, which also is a platform for presidents.
It is, because the handling of natural disasters is often a proxy for voters of competence. They look at how you handle something like that and they say this person is capable of handling big, important things. And that's why President Biden tomorrow is heading to North Carolina and South Carolina and Florida and Georgia the next day.
Here we see the vice presidential candidates there. Tim Walz standing a lone man behind his lectern. Ed, give us your last thoughts as we watch here as J.D. Vance is off in the wings for the moment. Oh, there he is.
It's performance. That seems obvious, but no faux pas, and they're looking for a viral moment. That's what they'll be looking for today.
No handshake.
Handshake, and there you have Governor Walz appears to be taking some.
No handshake. Come on, guys.
Vance doing the same as our colleagues.
They should have shaken hands.
That's right. Well, we have the vice presidential debate coming up in a moment. It will be moderated by our own Nora O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota
Here we
Tim
go.
Walz take the stage. Well, they've taken the stage, so stick with us here and join us also on our streaming
Bro,
channel, CBS News 24/7.
I don't care, CBS. I'm just trying to watch it.
See anywhere else. Thank you for joining us.
Let's get patriotic. Let's go.
Tonight, with just over
Here we
a
go.
month to go until Election Day, the first and only meeting between the two men who hope to become Vice President of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway.
We should just go ahead and let Trump and Kamala go at it one more time. Just one more.
The CBS News Vice Presidential Debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back. And we are ready to continue to build the future together. We're going to turn this whole country red with...
Ooh, Tim's a bad debater. This is going to be bad.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
Maybe.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America Decides, the Vice Presidential Debate.
Let's go!
Good evening, I'm
America.
Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
Weird versus basic. Let's go. Basic Tim Waltz versus. Oh, there we go. We had a handshake.
Debate. These are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to.
They won't.
Questions will be directed to the candidate, who will have 2 minutes to respond.
Okay.
The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for
Rebut.
rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the
Oh, they gonna be talking over each other. They gonna be chirping. Pop, 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 pop.
to facilitate the debate between
Chirp,
the
chirp.
candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set.
We already know
Senator,
questions.
thank you for joining us.
What you gonna do
Let's
for
get
Iran?
started. Tonight, our
Israel.
country is facing several unfolding
What you gonna do with
crises. The Middle East
the
is on
border?
the brink of war.
Told you.
Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of
Hurricane.
Helene.
Yeah.
And now a labor strike as 25,000
Oh, the
dock
ports.
workers from Maine to Texas
Yeah.
are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora.
I knew it.
Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than
We paid for
40,000
it.
U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional.
You wonder why our potholes aren't getting fixed? Because we're making sure potholes don't happen in Israel.
The largest state
That's
sponsor
why.
of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz,
Woo.
the final voice in the situation.
That's not good.
Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th.
No, it didn't. It started in 1948.
Over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners.
Technically, even before that. This started like all the way back at the Ottoman War when the Ottomans fell.
Is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis.
We drop a nuke,
Gaza.
or we allow them to drop a nuke.
The expansion of Israel and its
That's
proxies
insane.
is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met.
Bruh.
And both of his
You're gonna need to
Secretary of
spicy this
Defense
though.
and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've
Yep,
seen
that's
out of
true.
Vice President
He should have said the whole thing where Vance called him a Nazi.
We've seen a calmness.
Look it
He's
up.
able to be able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President
Bruh,
said today,
low energy.
we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And
Yes,
most important,
he does not care if we nuke Iran. Let's be real. JD Vance does not care. He's like, bro, glass them all. That's what JD Vance wants to do. Oh, there we go.
Who either one of us are. I was raised in a working-class family. My mother required food assistance.
Let me waste a minute and a half of my time talking about my origin story rather than actually answering the question.
With addiction for a big chunk of my early life.
I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly,
Answer the question.
I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question,
The
we
most
have to remember
attainable.
that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People are afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy.
To be fair, it's because they thought he would nuke them. Everyone thought Trump was willing to fire the nuke. He almost fired a nuke on a hurricane.
Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep.
Like I said,
safe,
yes,
and we
yes,
should support
he doesn't
our
care.
Allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations.
What you mean, what?
That had boxed Iran's.
But I say that was confusing.
Yeah, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program.
I'll answer it.
And put
Tell me.
nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when
Not even just that. You guys, the Soviets have just as many as we do. There's no stopping them from giving the information to Iran. I love how we can pretend that we could stop a nuke from being made.
and they received traumatic brain injuries.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him.
Yep.
Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks.
None of this is steady.
Our coalition is strong, and we need steady leadership that comes.
Bro, I broadcasted the time.
Senator
I don't know
Vance
what
said
to tell
the
you.
U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that.
You didn't miss much, don't worry.
He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the
It's
consequences
live. I couldn't. I
are-
got to start when they start.
Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Let me see if I can put chat up
Diplomacy's
on
not a
the
dirty word, but I think that something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what, the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger,
There we go.
stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans
Good question.
and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change.
Yeah, we should. I mean, we're leaving this planet for younger people. We should not screw up the world.
Reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Go ahead, Jay.
First of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph.
He's immediately about to change it and throw shade. Let's see it.
A 6-year-old child.
Here we
It
go.
was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster.
Not a bad answer.
And Laura, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very,
Like I said, they're trying to not out-weird each other, so they're not really throwing barbs right now. I don't know if this might be a boring debate.
to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water.
They don't start throwing punches. We might switch to a video game.
Talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions. This idea that carbon emissions drives
Here we go.
climate change.
But don't.
Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument. So we're
We
not
got
arguing
airplanes,
about
we
your
got
science. Let's just
everything
say
else.
That's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China.
No,
manufacturing
I mean,
overseas.
not by percentage, because you think about the silicon, the CHIPS Act.
Carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting
The CHIPS
cleaner air
Act
and
literally
cleaner
is
water,
making
the best thing to do
microchips
is
here
to double down and invest
instead
in
of
American
Taiwan.
workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have
She
2
strengthened
minutes to
unions.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there. In contact with the governors, I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused.
Bro, they are not acting quick enough,
This
though.
thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance
There's
has
another one in the Gulf right now.
Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, and in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United United States of America. Some of
them, a lot
of them are being
that was good.
Especially the components that go into those solar
That was
so
good.
If you want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built
Tim, that was good.
I think one in the past 40 years.
Microsoft's is retrofitting one right now.
Kamala Harris has done the opposite.
I mean, they're only doing it for their AI farms, but still, just saying.
Would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our #1 export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer.
Ooh, that was a good line. Ooh, that was a good line. Our biggest export's topsoil from erosion? My dude! That was a bar.
How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil...
I mean, he really didn't do that. He really didn't do that. To be fair, JD didn't do that. JD's saying we should be actionable with things that make sense. He's not saying it's a hoax. Trump says it's a hoax, but JD didn't say that. I'm gonna be real.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate.
Unprecedented. And we cannot stop it now. We can do a lot to help it, though. That was the crazy thing about COVID, was how much we helped the environment by just staying home.
Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific
That's rough, bro.
about exactly how this will work?
I think we have to have borders, but that
parents who have entered
is
the
rough.
U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil. You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We
That
have
affects
a
my
historic
students.
immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations.
Obama deported more people than any president before him. Obama was called the deporter in chief. The illusion that Democrats are just allowing illegals in, carte blanche, is insane.
I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations, and that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got...
I mean, to be fair, this is like JD's strongest point is immigration. So he's going to hit this good and hard.
About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border.
Yeah, they should be out. They should be out. If you do a crime, you're out. 100%. This is a good point.
To undercut the wages of American workers, a lot of people will
You won't stop that.
They can't work for less than minimum
Yeah.
wage in our own country.
Yeah,
And by
Derek.
the way,
Yep.
that's really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's
I'm getting
work.
political, bro.
My point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them, hopefully, are at homes with their families. Some of them have.
I love that he's so internet brained. You notice he tripped up on traffic.
Policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember, when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor,
They're still doing the Trump border policies. They're still deporting people on insane levels.
is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules.
They know that fentanyl's primarily coming in through ports of entry.
But I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis at this.
Yeah, but fentanyl's not coming in through kids. Fentanyl's coming in on boats, on semi-trucks, inside the tires. It's coming through the ports of entry. Like how you get in through the country normally, the drugs are coming in the same way. They're not coming in through drug mules. People can only carry so many drugs on them, and the amount of drugs coming in, it's too much for people to carry. It's not how that works.
And And that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce.
So much is coming through those border entries that even though they get a whole bunch, they can't get it all. That's why it's in the country.
It was crafted by conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol say this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal
Yep, good point. And then Trump said, don't do it because it hurts me. Yep.
Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications.
And they killed it.
Just what America wants.
They did.
But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually
Nail him to it. Yes, it'll hurt me. Yep.
Because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to
He did.
What would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the option.
That was good. That was good. That was good.
And he promised you, America, how easy it would be.
But the problem is both of them are like they're being safe. Both of them are being so safe right now.
90% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. Here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people.
Mexico didn't pay a dime for that wall. It got even worse. Some Mexicans took pieces off the wall, brought the materials for their house, and did renovations.
She'll sign it.
We paid for their wall.
Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a disgrace, and it has to stop.
Nowhere near on the level that they use a semi-truck or a boat, cargo boat, or an airplane and just throw it off and dump it into the forest, and then they have mules in the forest to grab it.
And now that she's running,
you don't move that much drugs
she says that somehow
by foot. It's not the way to do it. It's not financially feasible. It's not financially as profitable. There's more chances to get busted. You have to hire more people. There's so many points of failure if you go by foot.
Massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look,
I mean, if they commit a crime, they should be gone.
But the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this.
Yeah. Here we go. Here we go. Time to get spicy. Time to get spicy.
The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Lankford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergarten to school.
Because people were harassing them.
Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump,
the crime of being too funny.
It becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think
he did a good
as
job.
Lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings.
He does. He did a good job. That was good. That was a good Tim Walz answer. Because you gotta understand, Tim Walz is a crappy debater. If you look at his history, he sucks at debates. So the fact that he's even hitting like this, I'm actually surprised. I was thinking JD was gonna stomp this dude.
At the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are.
But I'm gonna give it to JD. JD's doing a really good job not being weird.
Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered.
He didn't go, they're eating the dogs. He didn't do it.
But most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico. You've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in
Here we go.
Look,
Here we go.
Springfield, Ohio, and in communities
Time to go back to back.
across this
Here we go.
country, you've got schools
Spicy
that are
time.
overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable.
But they're all legal Haitian migrants. Nope, they're legal. They're legal migrants. If you kick them out and deport them when they are legal migrants, you are committing ethnic cleansing because you're only kicking them out because they're Haitian.
And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem.
It's called ethnic cleansing.
Kamala Harris does.
They're not illegal.
Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable.
Yes.
But it becomes
Yes.
Nope. Look, this bill also gives
Damn.
to adjudicate. I agree.
Yeah.
It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to
Yeah, people are asleep. Let's be real.
you start to adhere to what we
It's
know
been a
are
rough
American
day.
principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25.
No one's watching Biddle to find out politics.
I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it.
Except
The
Eric
bill
and you.
does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Yep. That was a good answer.
Governor, and just
Good
to
answer.
clarify for our viewers,
JD's being a little,
large number of
little tested.
who have legal status temporary.
Ooh, I called it!
I think it's important
We're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were.
I said you were good.
Fact check, and since
Don't be hating on me. I said you were cool.
What's actually going on? So there's an application.
I'll see you at school tomorrow.
CBP One app, where you can go.
Oh man, that was so good. That was so good.
Apply for parole and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border one. That is not a
That's
person
not.
applying for a
No,
green card
they're
waiting
applying
10
for it.
years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration.
Oh, that was good. That was good answer, Sam. Thank you for describing the legal process.
Since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen. We want
That was so good. That was so good. They cut both their mics.
the audience can't hear you because your mic. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters.
Oh my God. Cut both their mics and then talk down on them. Like, let me mansplain this for you a second. We have questions. Thank you.
Housing and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Come on.
Thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's
Tax,
where we come from.
Wall Street speculation.
Understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back.
God, that was
It's
good.
It's healthy. That's what's supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at.
Yes.
And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing.
Bro, whoever just joined, go back 3 minutes. Go back 3 minutes. Ooh.
As far as the housing goes,
This is getting
I see
good.
in Minnesota, 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class.
They don't.
$6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota,
Ooh.
reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground.
Bruh, that's getting spicy.
$1,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks from Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best. More people are participating in it, and folks have the...
All right, so I got to be honest. I got to be real. That was a lot of running around. That was a lot of running around. Did not really answer.
Increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you.
How you gonna pay for it?
Without ballooning the deficit?
How you gonna pay for it? Come on.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good.
Yeah, but he ain't gonna do any of it. Democrats don't actually fulfill their stuff.
Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border, and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If
That didn't answer the question. How are you going to pay for it?
Middle-class problems, then she ought to.
He's not answering. How is he going to pay for that 5.8 trillion? How?
Tells you a lot about how much you can trust.
He's not answering the question.
Plans. Now, Donald Trump's
Remember that.
plan is not just a plan, but
People will play tricks on you by doing that. They will answer a question by not answering the question. He's redirecting you.
And they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies to deliver the highest.
But what is the economic policy?
In this country,
How?
1.5% inflation.
What is it?
And to boot, peace and security all over the world.
But how do you get it? How do you get the to boot?
Plan doesn't make sense. I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017.
Nope. I had to come back for that. Here's the problem with that.
In a generation in this country.
Every part of it that affected the middle class had a sunset where it stopped. It stopped in right when his presidency ended. Everything for his billionaire friends had no sunset date. They still have the tax cuts from the Trump tax cuts, while we don't. Remember that.
What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years?
That's true.
Last year as president. That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
I know, bro.
Governor, you say trust the experts, but those same experts for 40 years said that if we shift our manufacturing base off to China,
good question.
Cheaper goods. They lied about that.
It's a good question.
Shift our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico.
It's so good, Derek. It's so good. Yeah, dude, this is not. And they're not answering the question. How are they going to pay for it? Tim kind of did by saying make the rich pay their fair share, but he doesn't say how he's going to make them, like what tax policies you would change to make it actually happen. The reason why is so they don't plan to make it happen.
Not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7.
But what's your plan to bring back American manufacturing?
They're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop. And we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
If you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China.
Yep.
So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult.
Yep.
Companies that were willing to ship it over.
Florida's a right to work state.
Folks that
Yep, that's true.
Capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And
that's a plain talking point.
Got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The Vice President is often the last voice the President hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring
and he
of
lied.
1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out,
Bro, now you giving your origin story.
Travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers.
Answer the question.
Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people. Working
So he
on
lied.
farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to...
Oh, JD's ready. You can see it.
And then it's putting yourself out there and
He's like a
letting your folks
poised
understand what
panther.
it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier, or it was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance.
That wasn't a good answer.
You called your running mate unfit for the nation.
No, called him a Nazi. Called him a Nazi.
America's Hitler.
There it is.
I know you've said and asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president. Writing to someone in 2020, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism.
How you gonna have a VP that talked crap against you?
Many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be
I'm not talking.
American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job.
My kid was yelling in the background.
I believe, and I've been a United States senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're not probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where
He continued most of his policies. What are we talking about? Immigration, he kept separating families. Trade, he did exactly the same. His plan to leave Afghanistan was exactly the same.
You're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle class.
They're the same dude. One's just better at hiding his racism.
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind.
Should be up to the doctor and up to the mother.
This all into motion. He brags about how great it was.
Ain't my life on the line.
Put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade. 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duval, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care.
That hurt to hear, bro.
This is not where, if you don't know Amanda,
Someone who teaches 12-year-olds, that hurt to hear, bro.
Project 2025 is going to have a registry
Mm.
of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world.
Yep.
This is about health care. In
That's
Minnesota,
true.
we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of
All right,
Americans
after
don't
this
agree,
issue,
with everything that I've ever said on
leaving.
this topic.
I'm dipping out.
You know,
I have a
grew up in
headache.
working
I've been
class
trying
family in a
to
neighborhood
go
where I
through
knew
it
a
so I
lot of
can
young
hit
women
my
who
head.
had unplanned pregnancies
I'm
and
tapping
decided
out.
to terminate those pregnancies
Ain't no
because
fireworks.
they feel like they didn't have any other
They
options.
being too basic.
And, you know, I one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she
It's
told
his
me something
wife.
a couple years
It's
ago
his wife.
that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically,
How are you giving them more
we have
options by
a
taking the
big
options
country,
away?
And it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes.
Let's be honest,
a
people said
very,
the same
very
stuff
messy
about segregation.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that they're diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe v.
Oh, that was good.
When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned,
That was
I think,
good.
referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did during when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a
He tried so hard to throw shade
2023,
while
and the
not
people of
throwing
Ohio
shade.
voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing.
But you've done nothing and have brought nothing.
Making fertility treatments
How?
more accessible, because we've got to do a better job
How?
of that. And that's what real leadership.
You're not answering how.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that.
Yep.
Women having miscarriages.
Yep, and dying.
Women not getting the care.
Vitro.
Physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true.
That's
we also
good.
make it, we're a top 3
That's
state
good.
for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the
pro-abortion,
law is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country.
Why do
more
religions
pro-baby
have
and pro-family.
hospitals?
Please.
It's weird that religions have hospitals.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong
That is
about?
not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things work best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked
There
a
it
specific
is.
question, Governor. You
I
gave
had
me
to
a
pay
slogan
it.
as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
All right. And with that break, I'm dipping out. Y'all,